I will show you a very amazing weapon you can use to destroy the Caro-Kann defense. So there are basically three variations you need to know, and it's pretty important to know all three of them. So we are going to play e4 and our opponent is playing pawn to c6, which of course is known as the Caro-Kann defense. So we're going to play d4, taking the center, pretty standard, and black is going to play d5. And we are going to play the advanced Caro-Kann. So of course, almost everybody with black will play bishop to f5 because this is the main setup for the Caro-Kann variation. And it is against this specific line that we do have a very amazing opening. And that is playing pawn to g4 right here. And if you have never seen this, this looks pretty crazy, but it's actually a really good move. And we are currently attacking the bishop. And black has to choose what he is going to do, and that is where we are going to get three different variations. We have two variations after black goes back here to g6, and we also have one variation when black goes back to d7 or to c8. So we're going to start off with the variations after black plays the bishop to g6. So you might have already guessed what the next move is, and that is pawn to h4. And we are just going to try and win this bishop straight from the opening. So if black is careless, if black doesn't pay attention, we are going to push to h5 and we are going to try and win the bishop. So the two main variations you are going to get here are h6 and h5. Both of those have as a plan to make sure that the bishop can go back one square. Very, very rare is also this move, pawn to f6. And the funny thing is, against this, you can actually play pawn to e6, taking away this final square for the bishop. So anyways, you will still be able to try and win material here. But we are going to continue with pawn to h6. So we're going to play h5. That was the entire goal. We want to win this bishop, and black has two choices in all of these lines. Black can either just go back to h7, but very often black can also choose to go here with the bishop and try and target your rook. If that ever happens, you can just play f3 anyways, and now you will see that your pawns are basically taking up this entire diagonal, so the bishop will have to go back. And after this, you can just continue with the same plan as you would normally do. But we are going to continue with the variation where black plays bishop to h7 immediately. And it's very important here to know this one crucial move, and that is to play pawn e6. And pawn e6 looks crazy, I know, we are just giving away a pawn basically. But the idea is that we want to be as aggressive as we possibly can. We want to keep attacking. We tried to win the bishop, it didn't work. Now we are going to try and destroy the enemy king side. So we are playing here pawn to e6, targeting this weak square here on f7. And there are a couple of things black can do. Most of the time black will capture. Well, let's say black just ignores it and just develops the knight. You can already see that something like this is not really what black wants to play. We can also develop our knight, maybe go in for checks, and yeah, everything is very tricky, and black will be in a lot of trouble in every single variation. So most of the time black will capture you, and that is what we are going to continue with. You might also think, well, maybe black can push, but you should already notice that this is pretty devastating. This pawn is just too strong. We are taking up these two squares near the enemy king, and it's going to be game over pretty quickly. For example, a move like bishop here to d3, and let's say if black captures, we can recapture, and now you can just see that we can go in here with the queen, and there's pretty much nothing that black can try. Let's say they try to play something like queen here, just to give the king a little bit of breathing room. We have queen here, check, the king has to move, and then all of a sudden here we have queen to f7, and we are winning this bishop, giving checks, and yeah, destroying black in every variation. All of this to say that once we push e6, basically black is forced to take, and that is one of the key things in this opening. And you might think, well, we just gave away a pawn. How is this a good move? Well, it's just because we are weakening the black position so much, and many of these same ideas will apply. So here we are going to play bishop to d3, still really key move in this opening. Trying to go for this bishop trade. Of course, black doesn't have to capture it. I think many players will capture it because they will be happy that they are finally getting rid of this bishop. Also, if we capture them, this is creating some problems. For example, if I just make a random move for black, if we are taking this, you can already see that the queen's going in, the queen's attacking the rook. Let's say the rook goes back, queen g6 check, king has to go here. We can go in with the knight as well, and all of this doesn't really look too good for black. So most of the time black is going to capture you here on d3, and again we can still capture with the queen, and activating the queen is one of the key ideas. You always want to activate the queen and try aiming for this g6 square, and there's pretty much nothing that black can do about this. Even if we look at this position, well, the only thing you could say is maybe black can go closer with the king. That's a good move, because then it's just checkmate and one, and that's pretty easy to finish off the game like this as white. So black has to play something else, and we are always going in with the queen, giving a check, chasing the enemy king away. And that is the thing with this opening. Okay, we are making these crazy pawn pushes. We are also a little bit weakening our own king side, even though you will notice our king is actually completely safe. But the thing is, the black king is not safe, and we are going to hunt it, and we are going to keep hunting it until we win material. So here we play knight to f3. You can already see this coming. And yeah, it's pretty much lights out for black already at this point. Let's say queen e8, knight check, the king has to move over. We can set up something with the bishop here, and yeah, it doesn't really matter what I try to show for black. If we make any random move, of course this is a lot of trouble. For example, here we are also winning the rook. Let's say they capture our queen. Again, we are winning the rook, so we are always winning material, always checking this king, so it's a pretty devastating line. You don't want to run into this as black. And now we are going to take a look at the second variation. So pawn to e4, c6, d4, d5, e5, and then the bishop develops, the Caro-Kann opening. We are attacking with g4, the bishop has to move back, h4, and our plan is still to go here with our pawn. If black goes here, that's also possible, but then we just push f3, the bishop has to move anyways, and then you can still go for pawn to h4. So that is the same variation basically. So let's say we put the pawn here on h4, and yeah, black has to do something, and here black is going to try and play pawn to h5. Again, creating the square for the bishop, but there is a small difference here, and the difference is in the other variation, we were able to kick away the bishop. And in this variation, that is not possible because we can't push our pawn to h5. There's a black pawn here preventing us from doing that. But the good thing for us is many of the ideas are the same. So here you can just play pawn to e6 again. And it's up to black. Most of the time black is going to capture this. Pushing this, it's always pretty terrible because you are leaving these big holes in your position and you are going to be destroyed. Here the best move is even pawn to g5. Trying to open everything up, trying to activate pieces, come in with the knights, come in with the queen, and it's going to be devastating. The difference here is that if black ignores this, you can still take, but you will notice the bishop can actually capture back. So in many of those lines, you don't want to take immediately. For example, here, pawn to g5 would be a good move, kicking around his knight, and then still, yes, you can capture here, but sometimes it's not necessary, and it's better to try and build up some other attack as well. But everything depends on your particular position. Of course, if you already have this pawn here on f3, that's also a good thing because you are stopping this knight as well. But most of the time, I think you will just see players take. Sometimes they also play queen d6, and this is one of those moves where, okay, the best thing you can do is just capture and then go for g5. And that's the main thing in these positions. You always want to go for this. And then we can still, as white, develop all of our pieces. And you can castle still if you want to on the queen side as well. But we are going to continue with pawn takes because it's the most popular move by far for black. Same plan, we play bishop to d3, takes. Again, black doesn't have to take, but let's say black goes back. Well, all of a sudden we have, again, this tactic. We can go here with checks, and yeah, things are going to get really interesting for white. Going back with the bishop here to f7 is maybe a little bit better if you want to move the bishop, but then still g5, and we are going to try and set up this position. So we can basically take away all of the room for this knight. So the knight has a really tough time getting into the game. But we are going to say that black captures, which is the most popular move, and then we take with the queen. And now you will notice that, of course, black always has many moves. But because in this particular move order, we haven't yet been able to play pawn to g5. And that's an important difference. Of course, if black just is a little bit careless and they play something like knight f6, we are still going to play g5. You'll notice that right here, we have actually not had any chance to play g5. So black can do many things, but the best thing for black is to capture. So we can't play pawn to g5. If black doesn't do this, we are basically almost always playing just pawn to g5, because of course it takes away some key squares and the enemy camp as well. So let's say here black captures. Well, you should already see what's coming. Queen g6. We always have the same setup. King has to move, and then we can take this pawn on g4, and you can already see the king is again getting in a little bit of trouble. The king is already in the center. White queen is already aiming at this weak pawn that cannot be defended by any other pawns, and it's going to be spicy. We are going to try and activate more pieces and go for a king attack. But this variation gives a little bit of chances to black. For example, knight f6, just a little move. Now we have to move the queen, wasting a little bit of time. Let's say queen to b6, and you can just keep developing. There's no real exact theory, in my opinion. You have to know once you get to move 10, 11, 12. Once you get there, it's more about what did your opponent play, because maybe they deviated from my line, and also how can you try to go for an attack. So knight f3 is usually a very interesting move. And if you look at this for black, check out this bishop. Check out this rook. What's happening right here? Look at this knight. Black doesn't have anything. And that's the entire goal with this opening. We want to both destroy the structure, but also prevent black from making any decent move. And black will have to play something strange, like for example knight a6. I mean, black has to play something, right? They have to play a move, and it's really hard to find a good move. And often here you have tricks, for example knight to e5, check. The king has to go back, and here there are multiple good moves. You could go for this if you want to. But of course, let's say the rook moves. Maybe you don't want to capture this very useless bishop with your active knight. So this is interesting to look at, but maybe save this for a little bit later. And often white has pretty simple moves. We can just play something like c3. So our entire structure is now solid. Everything is safe. And now we are also going to ignite an attack by activating more pieces. And that's the plan in this position. Black is very passive. Black can barely do anything. And with white, you just want to activate pieces. I can't give you a specific move order from here on out, because of course everything depends on black's moves as well. But you just want to activate all of your pieces and keep going for an attack on the enemy king, and you will always win. The engine is also saying this position is completely winning for white. And then there is one more variation I need to take a look at. So again, we are playing the Caro-Kann. We play g4, and then our opponents can always go back to d7. And you might think this is strange, why would you go back to d7? But honestly, have you seen the previous two variations? They are not so good for black. So maybe going back with the bishop to d7 is not a bad option. And I think personally, if you are a Caro-Kann player, that maybe you should just go back with the bishop, because your opponent probably knows what they are doing and they will try to destroy you. Here, of course, we are not going to continue with h4 or anything. I mean, there's no point since the bishop is already gone. But here we are just going to play other aggressive and good moves as well. So we are going to play pawn to c4 with the simple idea that if black takes this, well, black's already in a little bit of trouble, since look at this center by white. Look at this bishop aiming at this weak pawn as well, so that can be attacked multiple times. Black probably has to play something like e6, knight c3, knight e7. Still, this knight, not so easy to develop this knight. So let's say the knight goes here. And would you look at that, we have a beautiful square here on d6. We can try and go in with the knight. So black basically has to move again, so he can prevent us from doing so. But still a really good position and fun position to play from white, because you can just keep developing pieces and you have all the space, you have the center, you have more activity, and at some point you can even castle. You can even castle here. And you might think, why would you castle? But there's not really a problem here. You can always play h3 and the entire position is solid. We still have the center, we still have more pieces, and black is a little bit cramped as well. But that is if black takes, and I think many players will capture, but you will probably also see the move e6 a lot. Black is just trying to have a really solid center and not activate our bishop. So we are just going to continue development. Knight c3, knight e7, still, like, where is this going to go? You could also say maybe bishop b4, okay, that's fine, but we are just going to develop our bishop as well. And after a move like knight e7 and then for example c5, we have a really solid structure. And also, what is this bishop doing here? Not much. And we might be able to chase it away with the pawn moves, or at least force it to trade. And usually bishops are a little bit better than knights, so this is not something a player that is playing the Caro-Kann would want. So let's say knight e7, knight f3, maybe this. You would think maybe this is a good idea for black. Because honestly, look at this. Where is this knight gonna go? Where is the knight gonna go? Nowhere. So maybe black would like to put the knight here on g6. That would open up his bishop, and maybe he can try and finally be safe. And this is the final thing I wanted to show you, that knight g6 is probably something really common you will get, and you can completely punish this as well. Simply playing pawn to h4 and asking black, what are you even doing? And the engine is screaming at black that they have to move back the knight to e7. It's the only move, because black's just losing. And even with knight back, black's just losing because he is giving us time to set up an attack. Of course, if black is careless, we can just play something like pawn here, and yeah, the knight has got to go back here to the f8 square, and I mean, this is not looking so good. Even things like rook g1, pushing, destroying the entire king side are possible here. If black tries to play a similar strategy with, for example, pawn to h5, there are also many interesting tactics. For example, here takes. This also attacks the knight, so the rook has to move. That means the castling rights have already been destroyed, and now we can even play knight g5. And I don't know if you see the threat here, but there is something really funny and really simple. Okay, first of all, we are attacking the rook, but that's not the point. The entire plan is, what's going to happen with this f7 pawn? I mean, we already have a double attack. So basically black has to play queen e7. And while black is distracted, we can suddenly push this to h5. And now the knight doesn't have a single square anymore. The knight is lost, the knight is trapped. And I think this just shows you that if you study this opening, this Bayonet attack, it is called, you will be able to destroy Caro-Kann players. Most of them won't know what's happening, and you will be able to get a quick lead. But it is important that you study these variations, and I have put the Lichess study for all of these variations below this video, so you can go check it out and study them a little bit, so you at least know the tricks that you have in these positions, so you can get some easy wins against the Caro-Kann players. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.